About a month ago, I decided it was time to retire my old TV setup. I had just upgraded to a sleek, wall-mounted 65-inch monster, so the older unit, still functional, just bulky, was now hogging space in our cramped dining nook. My girlfriend, Leona, had been nudging me for weeks to do something about it, and honestly, I couldn't argue. It just sat there, sad and obsolete. So, I tossed it up on Craigslist, stand included. Figured someone might want a second-hand entertainment setup. At first, nothing. Just silence. I even considered chopping the price because, let's be real, it wasn't exactly a steal. Then I got a message. A guy said he might be interested and wanted to swing by to look at it. I asked if he was serious. I wasn't in the mood for a no-show. He said, yeah, definitely. We locked in 7 p.m. the next evening, and I gave him our address. We live in a fairly average 2-story place in Pinehurst, just me and Leona. I didn't want to deal with hauling the whole clunky system into my car just to meet at some sketchy gas station or whatever. I figured it'd be fine if the guy came by. The next night, 7 o'clock rolls around. I wait. Nothing. By 7:30, I texted him. Hey, still coming? He replied he was on his way. So I waited some more. He didn't show up until 8, and by then, it was already dark outside. Not ideal. When he finally pulled up, my first thought was, that's not going to work. He was driving this tiny 4-door, maybe a Kia or something. No way both the TV and stand would fit. I watched him cruise slowly by the house, then keep driving. For a second I thought he had the wrong place, but then he parked way down the street. Out of view. Weird, but whatever. He walked up, hoodie pulled tight, looked mid-20s, maybe younger. I met him at the front step. The TV and stand were just a few steps inside. I asked if he was planning to buy it. Instead of answering, he just stood there, silently staring at the setup. Full-on statue mode. Then finally he said, yeah, I think I want it, but I don't get paid until Friday. I just stood there, openly irritated. Like, dude, it's Tuesday. Why are you here now? I started subtly walking him toward the door. That passive-aggressive maneuver where you steer someone out before actually saying leave. As we moved, I asked, then why'd you come today if you can't buy it yet? He shrugged. Just wanted to see it in person. I didn't even reply. We stepped outside, exchanged a quick, awkward take care, and I closed the door behind him. The whole time this was happening, Leona had been upstairs. I flopped down on the couch and turned on the new TV, trying to shake off the weirdness. A few minutes later, she came downstairs with this tight look on her face and asked, why is that guy walking around our backyard? I sat up fast. Wait, what? She said from upstairs she saw him leave the front, then casually stroll around the side of the house. I'm not paranoid by nature, but that set off every alarm in my head. I rushed to the front window. His car was still parked way down the block. Still there. Creepy. I told Leona I didn't know why he'd be back there. Then I moved to the back windows, trying to get a better look. At first, I didn't see anything. I asked where exactly she saw him go, and she pointed behind this overgrown bush we've been meaning to trim for like forever. I squinted, then flipped on the backyard light. I leaned sideways to get a better view of the shadows. And there he was. Not fully visible, but enough, part of his hoodie, the pale corner of his face. He was crouched down, hiding. My heart dropped. I cracked the window open and shouted, hey, you need to leave right now, or I'm calling the cops. No hesitation, he bolted. Full sprint. I ran to the front, and Leona and I watched him tear down the street, jump into his tiny sedan, and speed off. Craigslist post? Immediately deleted. I reported the whole thing. What really haunts me is that I gave him our actual address. Rookie mistake. I keep thinking about what could have happened if Leona hadn't looked out the window. So this happened maybe 5 or 6 months ago, during one of those painfully slow afternoons at my old office job. You know the kind, where you've already checked your email 5 times, reorganized your desktop folders, and now you're just clock watching until freedom. On days like that, I'd usually kill time by scrolling my phone or browsing random sites. Sometimes for laughs, I'd dip into Craigslist. I wasn't looking for anything in particular, maybe a cheap bike I'd never buy or a motorcycle I couldn't even afford. That day though, I ended up clicking into the missed connections section. I'd never really explored it before, but boredom makes you curious. If you've never seen it, it's basically a place where people toss out Hail Marys to strangers they saw in real life but didn't talk to. Stuff like, you, green scarf and red hair at the gas station. Me, too nervous to say hi. It always struck me as a little off, but weirdly intriguing. Anyway, I'm scrolling through maybe 5 posts in, and one of them hits me like a cold wave. The title says, Blonde Girl in Fairbrook. That's my town. Not just where I live, but where I work. I click on it, half expecting it to be generic. Nope. It read, Saw you walking on Oak Ridge Thursday night, then again at Target on Friday wearing a Braves hat. Let me know if I can swing by sometime. My stomach flipped. Because yeah, I did walk down Oak Ridge Thursday night. And Friday, I definitely ran into Target for snacks. And I absolutely wore my Braves cap because I hadn't washed my hair and wanted to hide it. So now I'm sitting there, frozen, rereading the post. This wasn't a coincidence. This person had seen me twice in 2 days. And now they were reaching out. Anonymously. I couldn't decide how to feel. Part of me was creeped out, part of me weirdly flattered, but mostly I just felt uneasy. Like, okay, maybe they just live nearby, maybe they saw me by chance. But to mention both outings? That wasn't random. I didn't respond. I shut the tab and tried to shake the feeling. Later that evening, my friend Kendra came over. She lives a few blocks away, and we do dinner together pretty often. While we were making frozen pizza, I told her about the post. She immediately wanted to see it. So I pulled out my laptop, opened Craigslist again, and there was another post. New. Timestamped 40 minutes earlier. The title? Blonde Girl in Fairbrook, again. I swear my heart stopped. This one said, Saw you leaving work today. Really hope you check these and reach out. Kendra and I just stared at each other. Holy crap, she whispered. They're following you. There was no other explanation. First the walk, then Target. Now they were watching me leave my job. It wasn't just chance anymore, it was deliberate. We ran around the apartment pulling the curtains closed, peeking out the windows like we were in a low-budget thriller. We didn't see anyone suspicious outside, but honestly, that made it worse. My office building has a pretty big parking lot. It wouldn't be hard to blend in, just sit in a car and watch people. For the next few days, I was hyper-alert. I checked Craigslist constantly. Walked to my car with my keys between my fingers like you're taught in those self-defense videos. Nothing new popped up. No more posts. No one seemed to be following me. It was like they'd just vanished. Then a week later, something happened that shattered any illusion of safety. I got home from work, dropped my stuff in the kitchen, and headed into the living room. That's when I saw it, through the front window, a car idling just in front of my driveway. Not parked normally. Not passing by. Just sitting there, awkwardly angled, like it couldn't decide whether it belonged there or not. I moved to the window for a better look. As soon as I pulled back the curtain, the car slowly rolled forward, turned the corner, and disappeared. I didn't catch the plate. Couldn't even see who was inside. But something about it, just sitting there, waiting, sent a chill through me. The next day I was driving home, and a car pulled in behind me. Same make. Same cracked brake light on the passenger side. At first, I thought it was coincidence. But then I made a right. It did too. Then another. And another. 3 specific turns. My gut twisted. I was being followed. I started planning on the fly, thinking, do I go to the grocery store? Police station? Somewhere public. But before I made the final turn to my street, the car turned left instead. Just peeled off. Like they wanted me to know I was being watched, but not caught. That was it for me. I was done being passive. That night, I sat down and replied to the Craigslist post. I didn't sugarcoat it. I asked them why they were watching me. Told them to stop. Told them to leave me alone. I hit send. Closed my inbox. And waited. A few hours later, probably around 9:30, I checked again. Nothing. No reply. I walked into the living room to relax, try to forget all of it. And that's when I saw it again. The same car. Parked. Same spot as before. This time it looked empty. No one in the front seat. But something in my periphery made me freeze. On the edge of the yard, near the driveway, someone was walking. Slow. Toward the house. Toward my front door. My whole body locked up. I ducked from the window, grabbed my phone, and dialed 911 with shaking hands. As it rang, I heard it, the doorknob turning. Then a single knock. Deliberate. Slow. I ran to the bedroom, locked the door, and explained everything to the dispatcher, voice low and trembling. She told me to stay hidden. Officers were on the way. I didn't move. I didn't even look outside. 15 minutes later, red and blue lights flashed through my blinds. I let them in. They swept the entire house and yard. And here's the part that still makes my stomach flip. They found him. He hadn't run. He was crouched by the back window, trying to force it open. I told them everything, the Craigslist posts, the car, the pattern. And they nodded like they'd seen this before. After that night, I packed up and moved. Found a second-floor apartment in a bustling building on the other side of town. I double-check my locks now. Triple-check them sometimes. I haven't opened Craigslist since. Not for furniture. Not for curiosity. Not for anything. Alright, before I dive into this one, let me just say, I was 22, freshly living on my own, and made some choices that, in hindsight, were questionable at best. I just moved into a one-bedroom apartment on the edge of a sleepy town, juggling a part-time job that barely covered rent. I wasn't exactly drowning in options, but I had saved just enough to start looking for a car. Thing is, my budget was laughable. I wasn't aiming for anything flashy, just something that could get me from point A to point B without bursting into flames. Public transport was serviceable, but having a car would have made life a whole lot easier. So, like any broke 20-something, I turned to Craigslist. I spent a couple of days scrolling through listings, dodging obvious scams and half-blurry photos, when I stumbled across one that seemed promising. The car looked decent, nothing glamorous, but solid. The price was fair, and the post had just gone live. I messaged the seller, who replied within the hour. Said his name was Colby. He sounded chill over text. Nothing weird. We exchanged a couple of messages, and I told him I'd prefer to meet the next evening. He agreed. Now, here's where I should have paid more attention to the little red flags. I asked if we could meet somewhere public, like a gas station or a strip mall parking lot, mostly because I didn't want to Uber out to some residential address. But Colby pushed back, said the car wasn't road ready yet, and that it'd be easier if I just came by his place. Against my better judgment, I agreed. The next night, around 8:30, I caught the bus out to his neighborhood. It was one of those quiet suburbs on the outskirts of Norfield, rows of identical houses and not a streetlight in sight. The kind of silence that feels heavy. I texted him when I was a block away. No reply. I found the house. It looked average. Split level, bland siding, a basketball hoop over the garage. The car was parked in the driveway. I walked up and knocked. Nothing. Waited. Then my phone buzzed. It was Colby. Just come inside. That should have been the moment I turned around and walked away. Why would I need to go inside when the car was literally sitting in the driveway? But I told myself maybe he needed to grab the keys or some paperwork. Curiosity and naivete overruled caution. The door was unlocked. I cracked it open and called out, "Hey, I'm here," and stepped in. No answer. The place was weirdly normal. Beige carpet, tan walls, a few family photos on the wall that I didn't look at too closely. I stepped maybe 4 feet inside and waited. Still no Colby. Then I heard his voice. "Yeah, come on in. This way." It came from somewhere deeper in the house, around a corner. I couldn't see him. Something about the tone felt wrong. Too flat, too rehearsed. But again, I ignored my instincts and took a few cautious steps toward the voice. Then, total darkness. Every single light shut off. Not dimmed, gone. I couldn't see my hands. My heart started pounding. I whispered, "Nope," and spun around, trying to orient myself. I could have been heading toward the door or into a closet for all I knew. Then I heard it. Footsteps. Fast. Coming from behind me. I panicked. Adrenaline surged and I stumbled forward, crashing into a wall. I bounced off it and kept moving, hands reaching for anything, a doorknob, a doorway, an exit. Then I felt it. Someone grabbed my arm. Just the forearm, but tight. My body froze for half a second. Then instinct took over. I ripped free, bolted through the dark, and by some miracle, smacked right into the front door. My fingers scrambled for the handle. Found it. Yanked it open. The night air outside felt blinding compared to whatever darkness I'd just escaped. I didn't look back. I sprinted those 4 blocks like I was being chased by something out of a nightmare. I didn't stop until I reached the main road and collapsed at the bus stop, still shaking. No one followed me, but I kept looking over my shoulder like a maniac until the next bus came. When I got home, I went straight to Craigslist. The listing? Gone. Vanished like it never existed. I sat in silence for a while, trying to process it. Then I called the non-emergency police line and reported everything. The address, the name, the bait and switch setup. Looking back, it's terrifying how close I came to being a statistic. Just another story in the paper. A few weeks later, I did end up getting another car off Craigslist. But that time, I met the seller in broad daylight in a crowded lot with 2 friends waiting nearby. I had rules now. Rules I don't ever break. I still use Craigslist, sure, but with a completely different mindset. Because once you find yourself running blind through a stranger's house, everything changes. You stop assuming people are just quirky or awkward. You start listening to that voice in your gut. The one that says, don't go in. A couple of years ago, I finally decided to sell my old beater, an '06 Chevy Trailblazer that had definitely seen better days. It had been my main ride for a while, and despite its age, it still ran surprisingly solid. I figured it was time to let it go, and maybe squeeze a little cash out of it. Nothing crazy, just enough to justify the hassle. I snapped a few photos outside my townhouse in Granville, slapped a $2,000 price tag on it, and tossed the listing up on Craigslist. I wasn't in a rush to sell, so I let it sit. After a few days, I got a bite. A short message. Is the car still available? I responded with, yeah, still have it. And the guy replied almost immediately. Said his name was Marcus, and that he could check it out the next evening after work, around 8 p.m. Now, I didn't exactly love the idea of some stranger pulling up to my house after dark, so I suggested we meet in the Walmart parking lot down the road. It's massive, half the lot is empty most nights, and it's where long haulers sometimes park overnight. Public enough to feel safe, quiet enough to talk. Marcus agreed, so the next evening I headed over, parked in the far corner, and sent him a message to let him know where I was. It was dead quiet back there, just a few scattered carts and flickering overhead lights. Then came the first thing that felt off. Before I even saw him, Marcus texted me, "What does your car look like?" Which was weird. He was the one buying the car. Shouldn't he know what it looked like from the listing? I replied, "Gray SUV, back corner of the lot." A minute later he answered, "Cool. I see you driving over now." But I hadn't moved an inch. Then a shiny red Ford Focus pulled up next to me. It looked barely a few years old. Definitely not what I expected someone shopping for a $2,000 Trailblazer to roll in with. Out stepped Marcus. Maybe early 30s, clean cut, glasses, dark hair. He was polite, gave me a handshake, and I started showing him around the vehicle, talking about the mileage, the replaced brakes, the usual rundown. Barely a minute in, he asked if he could take it for a quick spin. I said sure, and climbed into the passenger seat while he slid into the driver's side. But even as we started moving, something didn't sit right. The guy was glued to his phone. Not texting, just holding it, glancing at it constantly, like he was waiting for something. I tried making small talk. "Are you familiar with the area?" I asked. "Yeah," he replied, short and detached. Instead of circling the Walmart like most buyers do, he pulled out and headed toward this quiet stretch of road I barely knew. It ran past some old warehouses and patches of woods. No streetlights. No traffic. Just empty space. Speed limit was 35, but we were crawling. I kept trying to talk about the car, how it handled, the quirks, but Marcus barely acknowledged me. Just kept nodding, eyes forward, fingers twitching near his phone. I asked, "So how's it feel?" "Drives good," he muttered. Nothing else. A few minutes in, he slowed down and veered off into a broken-down lot. The concrete was cracked, overgrown with weeds, potholes deep enough to swallow a hubcap. It looked abandoned, like it used to belong to some shipping company years ago. And that's when I noticed the other car, parked way in the back, tucked behind a row of bushes. I hadn't seen it when we pulled in. Marcus drove halfway into the lot, turned off the engine, and pulled the key from the ignition. Then he opened his door. Something clicked in my brain. This wasn't right. I stayed frozen in the passenger seat, watching him step around the front of the car. That's when I saw movement near the back lot. 3 figures emerging from the shadows, men in their 40s or 50s, moving quickly toward us. Not walking, closing in. Marcus turned to me and said, louder this time, "Get out of the car." I didn't move. Then I remembered something. A habit I'd picked up after a bad deal years ago. I always brought the spare key. I felt in my hoodie pocket. There it was. I clicked the lock button just as Marcus reached for the passenger door. The lock snapped down, and he yanked the handle locked. He fumbled. I didn't wait. I vaulted into the driver's seat, jammed the key in, and fired up the engine. The Trailblazer roared to life. In the corner of my eye, I saw Marcus reach into his jacket, probably for the key he had, but I was already shifting into drive. I floored it. The tires screeched loud enough to wake the dead. The 3 men broke into a run, but I was already moving. I tore through the lot, bouncing over potholes like a maniac, and hit the road without looking back. I took the first turn I saw, then another. Then another. No headlights behind me. No one following. I made it home in one piece, adrenaline still frying my nerves. First thing I did was call the police. I told them everything, the location, Marcus's appearance, the red Focus, the other vehicle. They found the Ford Focus that same night, abandoned in the Walmart parking lot. Turns out it had been reported stolen a week earlier. Classic. I never found out if they caught Marcus or the others. Maybe. Maybe not. But that night burned itself into my memory. Since then, I've never sold anything in person without backup. And I never forget the spare key. That one habit probably saved my life. Last spring, when I was 30, I decided it was finally time to part with my 2010 Honda Fit. The car had been good to me. No major breakdowns, just the usual wear and tear. But I needed more trunk space for work-related gear, and the Fit wasn't cutting it anymore. I cleaned it up, gathered the service records, and posted it on a few local marketplaces. I included high-res photos, listed the mileage, maintenance history, and noted that I'd replaced the brakes last winter. Within a day, I got a message from someone named Marcus. His profile looked fine, activity within the past week, a few seller ratings, nothing that raised alarms. He asked some basic, reasonable questions. No lowballing, no weird requests. After a couple of messages, we agreed to meet at a big supermarket parking lot just off the highway. It was one of those places that always felt safe, wide open, plenty of light, security cameras on every corner, and a steady trickle of people coming and going. I scheduled the meeting for 2 p.m. on a Wednesday. Middle of the day, nothing sketchy. I arrived about 20 minutes early to tidy the car a bit more. Wiped down the dashboard with a microfiber cloth, cleaned the windows inside and out, and even tucked in the seat belts neatly. I wanted the car to look presentable. Not showroom level, but clean enough to show I took care of it. 5 minutes after 2 o'clock, a black SUV turned into the lot. It was a newer model, clean, tinted windows, nothing flashy. He parked 2 spots away and walked over. Marcus was in his mid-30s, maybe a few years older than me. Short beard, neutral expression. He didn't say much, just nodded and started circling the car, checking the tires, glancing through the windows. I handed him the keys, and he popped the hood, then crouched to peek under the frame. Mileage? He asked. 143,000 kilometers, I replied. Oil changed every 5,000. Dealer serviced. He nodded, said under his breath, then asked if I'd be willing to hold it if he left a deposit. I told him I'd be fine with a small deposit, and that the price was negotiable within reason. His response? I think I'm going to pass. He handed me the keys, turned around, and walked back to his SUV. No emotion. No questions. Just done. I stood there for a few seconds, surprised. It wasn't the rejection that threw me. It was the way he did it. No thanks, no, I'll think about it. Just turned and left. He drove out of the lot, calm and steady. I sat back in the driver's seat and checked my phone. No new messages. I figured that was it. Another just looking buyer who changed their mind. I shrugged it off, started the car, and pulled onto the main road. About 5 minutes into the drive home, I noticed a black SUV in my rearview mirror. Same make, same tint, same cracked taillight on the passenger side. At first, I thought it was a coincidence. Could have been anyone. These cars are everywhere. But when I changed lanes, it changed lanes. When I slowed to make a right, it followed. Then I made another right, and another. 3 specific turns, all mirrored. My stomach tightened. I turned off the podcast I'd been half listening to and rolled down the window slightly. The air was warm. I needed to think, to stay calm. I made a left onto a smaller residential street, one I knew well, full of narrow corners and stop signs. A perfect place to test whether I was imagining things. The SUV followed again. I turned left, then right, then curved through a dead-end loop. Still there. I wasn't just being followed. I was being tracked. I didn't go home. No way I was leading him to my apartment. I changed directions, zigzagging through side streets, trying to lose him. But he stayed 2 cars behind. Never too close, never backing off. Then I remembered something. There was usually a sheriff's cruiser parked near a park about 10 minutes away. I'd seen it there most afternoons. I headed that way, not speeding, but steady. When I turned the final corner, I saw it. Parked in the shade near a bench. A white and blue sheriff's vehicle. I didn't hesitate. I turned into the lot, pulled up beside it, and put my hazard lights on. The SUV stopped at the edge of the lot. It didn't pull in. It idled, facing me. Then, without warning, it turned sharply and drove away. No screeching tires. No rush. Just gone. The officer inside the cruiser looked up, stepped out, and walked over. "You good?" he asked. I nodded slowly, still watching the direction the SUV had gone. "I think someone was following me," I said. He looked at my car earlier, then left. Then showed up behind me 5 minutes later. The officer checked the dashcam footage from his cruiser. The camera had caught the SUV for a few seconds as it paused at the lot's edge. It wasn't enough to read the plates, but enough to confirm I wasn't imagining it. He took my statement, asked for a description, and said they'd alert nearby units. I asked if he thought the guy had plans to steal the car. "Could be," he said. "Or maybe he just wanted to see where you lived. Some of these guys tag cars during meetups. Then they come back later. Quiet. Quick. No mess." That hit me hard. It wasn't just about the car. It was about what came after. I went home, parked in a different spot than usual, and spent the rest of the night checking the blinds every time a car passed. I didn't sleep. The next morning, I drove straight to a dealership and traded the car in. Took a hit on the price, sure. But I didn't care. I didn't want it anymore. I didn't want to keep wondering if it had been marked. If someone had made a copy of the key. If they had plans I never got to see through. I signed the paperwork without hesitation. Marcus never messaged again. His account vanished a few days later, profile wiped, no trace. Now, I only sell through verified platforms and only meet in public places with high visibility. I never meet alone. I never hand over keys until the money's in my hand. And I don't let silence fool me anymore. I was 32 when I finally decided to sell the old electric guitar that had been collecting dust in the corner of my apartment. It was a sunburst Fender Stratocaster, nothing vintage or rare, but it had soul. I used to play it back when I had more time, before work swallowed my evenings and weekends. It had been with me through college gigs, late-night jamming sessions, and one particularly disastrous attempt at a garage band. But for the past few years, it had become more of a relic than an instrument. The decision to sell it wasn't emotional, it was practical. I needed the space, and I hadn't touched it in almost 3 years. I took a few decent photos, wiped off the dust, and posted it on a local marketplace app. No frills, just a clear title, a short description, and a fair price. Within a few hours, I got a message from someone named Roger. His profile seemed fine, normal activity, a few reviews, nothing alarming. He asked detailed questions, which I took as a good sign. He wanted to know if the pickups were stock, if the neck was original, whether the frets had been leveled. He knew his gear. Then he asked if he could come by that evening. It was already past 7 o'clock, and I hesitated for a moment. He suggested 8:30 p.m., said he worked until 8 and wouldn't have another chance until the weekend. I wasn't thrilled about the late hour, but I figured the guy had a job and was just trying to make it work. He sounded reasonable. Polite, even. I agreed. I spent the next hour cleaning up the living room, mostly because the guitar had been sitting half-buried under a pile of old laundry and unopened mail. I propped it up on its stand near the couch, turned on the hallway light and a floor lamp, and left the porch light glowing. The neighborhood was always quiet after dark, just rows of duplexes with tidy yards and sleepy porches. My neighbors were rarely home in the evenings, and I wasn't expecting any trouble. I didn't bother locking the front gate, just left it unlatched. At 8:35, a pair of headlights rolled up outside. I peeked through the peephole and saw a man about my age, tall, wearing a brown jacket. He looked around for a second, like he was double-checking the address. Then he walked up the path. I opened the door, and he gave a brief wave. "Roger," he said. But he wasn't alone. 2 other men stepped out of the car behind him. One was thinner and wearing a denim jacket, with long hair pulled back into a ponytail. The other was bulkier, in a black hoodie with the drawstrings pulled tight. His hands were tucked into the front pocket, and he kept his head low. Roger introduced them casually. "This is Mark and Jay, bandmates." I hesitated for a second. My stomach tightened, but I didn't want to be rude. Maybe they wanted to weigh in on the tone, or test the feel. I opened the door a little wider. "Cool," I said. "Come in." They stepped inside, and I closed the door behind them. The guitar was just a few feet in. Roger walked toward it immediately, crouching down to inspect the body and the knobs. He started asking more questions about the tone, the wiring, the wear on the frets. His fingers moved deliberately, but he never looked away from the guitar. Mark wandered the room slowly, glancing at my shelves and posters. I had a few framed prints from local art shows and a small collection of vinyls, nothing worth much. He looked down the hallway that led to my kitchen and bedroom. "Mind if I use the sink?" he asked, pointing vaguely toward the back. I didn't like it. I hesitated. Sure. Kitchen straight back." He nodded and disappeared down the hallway. Jay, the guy in the hoodie, stayed by the door. He leaned against the wall near the coat rack, arms crossed, saying nothing. He made a vague comment about a gig they played last month, but his words trailed off. He wasn't really talking. He was watching. Roger kept fiddling with the guitar controls. He adjusted the volume knob, ran his hand along the fretboard. "Neck's in good shape," he said. "What gauge strings do you use?" 11s, I answered, still standing stiffly near the coffee table. I tried to stay casual, but I was aware of everything now, every movement, every pause. Jay hadn't moved an inch. Mark still hadn't come back. Roger was asking questions, but they felt more like placeholders, buying time instead of gathering info. Then I heard something. A soft sound. Fabric rustling. A quiet, deliberate shift of weight. It wasn't coming from the kitchen. It was coming from the bedroom. I shifted my stance, subtly angling myself so I could see down the hallway. Nothing visible. Just the soft ambient glow from a small night light I kept plugged in. I spoke. "Hey Mark, you good?" No answer. Roger looked up briefly, then back down at the guitar. I took a step toward the hallway. Jay straightened slightly. That was enough. I turned back to Roger with a smile that probably looked strained. "Hang on," I said. "I think I left a tuner on the balcony. You'll probably want to check the intonation, right?" Roger barely nodded. "Sure." I walked toward the balcony door at the back of the room, trying not to rush. I slid it open just enough to slip out. The air was cold against my skin. I didn't waste a second. I swung one leg over the railing, then the other, and dropped. It was only about an 8-foot fall, but I landed awkwardly on the lawn. My right ankle twisted with a sharp pop. I gritted my teeth and stumbled forward, limping toward the back fence. I didn't look back. I could hear them inside, movement, voices, something being knocked over. I reached the fence, grabbed the top, and hauled myself over. My ankle screamed again, but I didn't stop. I landed hard in my neighbor's yard. Their back porch was dark, but I pounded on the sliding door. No answer. I slammed my fist against the glass. "Please help," I shouted. "Call the police." A light flicked on inside. An older man appeared behind the curtain, startled and wide-eyed. He cracked the door open cautiously. "They're in my house," I said, gasping. "3 guys, they're robbing me." He shut the door and picked up the phone. Minutes later, the red and blue lights flickered across the walls of the duplex. Officers arrived fast. I unlocked the side gate and let them in. They moved quickly, sweeping the house, weapons drawn. None of the men were inside. But the guitar was still there, oddly untouched. My wallet, however, was gone. So was a tablet I used for video calls, a pair of headphones, and a small lockbox I kept in my bedroom drawer with some emergency cash. The cops checked the backyard and found partial footprints under the window, the one I always forgot to lock. The detective who followed up told me they'd seen this before. One guy distracts, one guy watches, and one searches. It's fast, calculated, minimal risk. I gave them everything I could, descriptions, the make and model of the car, the time they arrived. But without plates or names, there wasn't much to go on. The detective said they'd probably done it before. They keep moving. No one ever gets a clean ID. That night, after everything calmed down, I sat in the living room staring at the guitar. It looked exactly the same. Same worn fretboard, same faded pickguard. But it felt different now, like it had brought something into the house, like it had invited danger. I didn't sleep. I kept the lights on and checked the locks every hour. My ankle throbbed, but I didn't care. I was too wired to rest. Back when I was in university, flat broke like most students, I was always scrambling to find a little extra money. During the summers, I usually managed to land some kind of job, and during the school year, I had a basic work-study gig. But it barely covered gas and the occasional midnight Taco Bell run. I wasn't exactly top of my class, so I had to study hard, which meant I couldn't pick up more hours even if I wanted to. By my 3rd year, things got especially tight. I was down to counting quarters to do laundry and skipping meals to stretch what I had. One afternoon, desperate and with nothing to lose, I pulled up Craigslist. I needed something fast and easy, no interview, no polished resume. Just labor. I clicked into the general labor section, hoping for yard work, moving gigs, maybe some basement cleanout. Stuff I could handle. I was 22, decent shape, and not afraid to get a little dirty. Within 10 minutes, I found a post that read, "Yard cleanup, few hours, $100. That was it. No fluff, no business name. Just a listing that looked like it had been tossed up in a rush. Posted an hour earlier. I jumped on it. The reply came fast. The person gave me an address and said, "Come by Friday at 9 p.m. bring gloves." That was the first thing that should have given me pause. Yard work at night? Who clears brush in the dark? But I didn't want to lose the job. I figured maybe the guy worked graveyard shifts or just didn't want to deal with it in the heat. I told myself it made sense. I could power through for a couple hours and walk away a little less broke. Friday night rolled around. I drove to the address, somewhere on the edge of Spring Hill. It was unfamiliar territory, the kind of area where streetlights are few and far between. The house was 2 stories, ordinary at first glance. But the front yard was a mess, bushes gone wild, leaves blanketing the porch, weeds strangling the walkway. I parked my beat-up Honda on the curb and texted the guy I was here. No reply. The porch light was off. No cars in the driveway.